our product is very simple. We pay about 3 billion euros every month to 2.5 million Belgian pensioners. So our yearly revenue is 50 billion. So that means that we are actually bigger than Accenture worldwide. And maybe a company that's more important, at least in my life. AB InBev is the biggest beer brewer in the world. They are located also in Leuven, where I am right now. And we have more revenue than they do. So we're bigger than beer and we're bigger than Accenture. You can imagine it's very important that we pay correctly, timely, and that we communicate clearly and correctly to all our pensioners. We have pretty much 11 million customers, because everybody who's Belgian or has worked in Belgium is now our customer or will be a customer at some point in the future. All of this is handled by about 2,500 of our colleagues. We work in this beautiful tower, which is called the Pension Tower at Brussels South. So before we get started, I'd like to discuss a few prejudices with you. I don't know what it's like in your country. In our country, people think that the public sector is slow, lazy, boring, and old. I can assure you that that's not always the case. However, we have some, what I think are unique constraints that are different in the private sector than in the private sector. So for example, people stay for a very long time. I've had colleagues who have been with our organization for 40 years. Being there longer than 20 years is certainly not an exception. So it means that people stay in the same organization for a while. And everybody, you know many people all over the organization. And people move to different teams and different roles. It also means, of course, that these people are not exposed much to other organizations or other technologies of ways of working. Besides our people, obviously our product, we hope that we will keep pensions for a long time. So everything that we do is inherently can be done with the very long term in mind. And since we are the public sector, we don't have a bottom line, right? We don't generate our budget through the income of the product that we build, but our budget is given to us based on what we promise to deliver and how much money there is available. So this makes it hard to identify really what is valuable for our customers and our stakeholders. There's no real correlation between the value that we deliver and the budget that we have available. And then finally, very important decisions about our product are made outside of our organization. They're made by politicians, and these decisions can take a very long time to make, or sometimes they come very suddenly. They can be very unrealistic with regards to deadlines and scope, etc. For example, about 2 years ago, a big pension reform was coming. So it would become possible to have a part-time pension. So you would still be working part-time and therefore building up more pension for that part-time working bit, while also getting some money of this part-time pension. So this is a radical change because all our systems are built under the assumption that you work until you retire. So this reform could easily take 6 months of all of our capacity to develop. And that's assuming that the legal text would be clear from the start and that there would be no complicated transition measures. So we were in full preparation, keeping on top of all the legal drafts and all the updates, and we expected the reform to be voted any day. But then, on the 18th of December 2018, our government fell over some unrelated political dispute. And so suddenly there was no more parliament that could vote on any of these legal reforms. And the Minister of Pensions had no more authority to change anything either. So this huge project that was coming suddenly disappeared. And actually today, nearly 650 days later, we still don't have a government and we still don't have a minister. We might get one next week if we are to believe what the papers are saying. And so they might pass this huge pension reform, or they might not. Or they might come up with something new. So we don't know. All I want to say is that change can be very radical also in the public sector. So my question to you, and especially to the system thinkers out there, while we do our story, keep these constraints in mind And maybe you can give us some tips on how to turn these into an advantage in our own organization. So Desales is what we call our main pension application. It collects all the data from the employers, from the employees, from other social security institutions. It's been fully developed in-house by our IT department. It's based on Java and Oracle. It started 20 years ago. We're up to about 4 million lines of code. So it's quite big, oops. And to support all of that, we have our central IT department in Brussels, or from home since March. With about 220 people, we have 4 sub-departments. So we have about a dozen development teams across 2 development domains. So the teams here, these teams here work on the attribution domain, which is where the pensions are calculated, the data is gathered, etc. Then we have the development domain, conformity and payment. So these teams here build the software that collect all the different pensions, make sure that they are under the legal limits, etc. That's the conformity part. And then finally send out all the payment instructions every month to all the banks. Apart from that, we have a transversal and an infrastructure and operations department. I've only shown here the parts that are relevant for our story. They do many other things as well. But our story will be mainly about this Desales applications. So that's the situation, say early 2018, which is where our story begins. We had been building an agile way of working for a few years now. We've had a few waves of agile coming through our organization. So by beginning of 2018, we had cross-functional agile teams that were pretty autonomous. We were working in 2-week sprints, and at the team level, it all worked. We had different variants, some Scrum, some Kanban, some Scrumban, and everything in between. So at the team level it worked, but we really struggled to bring it all together. This balance between autonomy and coordination was hard to get right. This was easiest to see at about release time. So every few months we had a major release of Desales, and this was always a big deal. You could see the stress rising, teams were like arguing amongst each other, that procedures keep changing, that deadlines keep moving. We had code freezes, manual testing sessions, etc. The effort needed to get our software out the door was pretty staggering. And it was clear that we needed a better way to work at scale. So in February, we invited a few trainers. So we had a LESS training provided by Jurgen de Smet. We also had a training about the less risky scaling framework. And so those trainings set us onto this path that Stefan will take us through. Oops, sorry. All right.
Yep. So I'm going to lead through the timeline. So this is a story of change, a transformation of an IT institution, a part of the IT institution at least. So it will be an organic presentation of different events that we believe have been crucial for us. You will see things about technical excellence that we mainly present. We will be talking about some organizational aspects, how we faced the Corona crisis, because this was for us, but for you, and also for the LESS organization here, a game changer. And we'll also start actually by talking about this famous flip that we took 2 years ago. So what's the flip first? it's the usual word that we use to refer to an organization that decides to go for a large-scale Scrum. So we decided 2 years ago to go that way. Why? It's because we had a big project that were coming to an end 2 years ago. Big project, basically SFP, so my institution was taking over another pension institution. And it was a very long project. So I think the project took more than 3 years. At the beginning, one team was involved. Things were running quite smoothly, peacefully. And at some point, we realized that we were ahead of schedule. So as a typical manager at the time, I decided to add one extra team. Things goes a little bit faster, but new problem started to rise. And 8 months before the deadline, we realized that there was still a lot of things to be done. And so it was the typical rush before the end of a big project. We have put almost all the manpower we could onto that project. Eventually, it was a success. So pensions were paid on time and properly. So big success for SFP. But still, we learned a lot of things, like integration between the work done by different teams is something which takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It's not easy. We also have issues with requirements being formulated to one team, and they were understood differently by one another team, because we realized that actually the teams were not really talking to each other. Integration phase at the end of the project, also one bad smell, was really long and painful. So there were lots of learnings, and we decided to start looking what could be the possible solutions. Tom also mentioned the less training. So we had the chance to follow this training a few months before the end of this project. Most of us were really inspired by the training. It was really energic. Also, we saw that Les was addressing some issues that we were facing, sometimes with some chaos, but I believe that chaos is part of the nature. So we saw really a possible solution for many of our issues. So we decided to consider less. So it took 2 or 3 months, I think, to put things in place. During that time, we defined the less perimeter, so the less bubble. In this case, it's 4 development team, 1 product owner, which is coming from business. So that was also a real game changer for us, because until then, IT had quite some, I would say, freedom about projects. So IT coordinators, IT directors could have had the chance to take decisions on priority and add some projects on top of the rest. Now we have a real business product owner that take decisions, smart decisions based on different stakeholders, different inputs, and different needs. And also, after this election of product owner, the first goal we went for was to define this one backlog, which is prerequisite to go further. So that's what you can see on the left. It's a big one. So pensions is a complex business, so you have lots of different things in there. So we had the teams, we had the product owner. We also we felt the need to have Scrum Masters that are not inside the team, but are acting transversally. So they are not attached to one specific teams, but they are really coaching, providing support to any people, any teams that requires it. Can be product owner, can be the teams themselves, can be me as well. And eventually the ICT manager, me, trying to put some inspiration, sometimes energy. Voilà, this was the less bubble. Of course, it's not the whole ICT. So we also had to deal with other stakeholders within the ICT, other manager, or the product owner had to deal with his management, lots of different stakeholders in the business. So it was quite a complex move, but that's how we managed it to start. Something also important that we had to take care is to get to the teams and get to the teams and the stakeholders the required responsibility. So we had this very nice exercise with Jürgen, where actually we put on paper, we put on the board different tasks, different responsibilities. And with the delegation poker that you may have experienced, we arrived to the conclusion that product owner will be in charge of priorities, teams will be in charge of the emerging architecture, and so on and so on. And eventually, once all of this was settled, we had to install the rituals, typical rituals, so sprint planning, sprint review, refinements where analysis is actually done, retro, and so on. But Tom will talk about that a bit later.
All right. So that was our last flip, which we did in January of 2018. However, before we could do the flip, we had to make some changes to the way that we released our software. I mentioned the major releases earlier, where we would push out a few months of development into production. We knew that we would never be able to make an impact if we kept doing it this way. And also, frankly, nobody liked major releases in the organization. Stress, the rush, the code freeze, the manual testing. In the end, we didn't even really exactly know what was going in production because it was so complicated. So at the lessons learned of our major release in June 2018, which is a sort of overall retrospective, we discussed the ambitious plan of getting rid of these major releases altogether and to release everything in 2 weekly releases that we were actually doing already. Although these 2 weekly releases were originally meant just for patches and bug fixes, but we had been using them to release the new functionality as well. So at this lessons learned, the No More Majors initiative was born. It's of course a whole story in itself, which I actually talked about at the last conference last year in Munich. So I'm going to be as brief as I can. We started a community of enthusiastic volunteers. We got some help from Thierry Depeau, who's Belgium's expert at CI and CD, and we got going. We kicked off in September. We gathered all the automated tests that were scattered all over the teams. We built a centralized build pipeline. We put some very clear visualizations about the state of the build and the performance of the build pipeline. We drastically reduced the complexity of our branching strategy. So we decided to simplify to this Git flow where we use lots of feature branches. This was a huge improvement from what we did before. We hope that it would enable us to simplify even further and to go towards trunk-based development in the future. A little spoiler alert, we're not quite there yet. You can see here our build pipeline takes an hour and a half to run. We have a lot of feature branches still. So we've not achieved continuous integration. We've not achieved trunk-based development. However, we did manage to achieve our goal. And since then, we deliver everything in 2 weekly releases, and we've never done a major release again. So basically, in 4 months' time, between September and December, we have achieved continuous delivery. The last thing I want to say about this No More Majors story, especially to all the people who are like me, the internal change agents, is that this was an initiative that was very much bottom-up driven, and we did it all ourselves. There was no big plan. There was no fancy change management framework with expensive consultants. There was just a clear objective, enthusiastic volunteers, enough management support, and one experienced coach, somebody who's been there before, but who doesn't force the solution onto us, and who also serves as a rally point. Every Monday, Thierry was there, and we knew that, so everybody actually showed up to the workshops. Either way, it was an experience that has taught me that if you keep trying different ways of making things move, sometimes they forget to stop you. And if you're transparent and authentic and very open in your communication, then when you move forward, nobody will force you to step back. So internal change agents, be creative, be courageous. If nobody forces you to stop, don't stop yourself. In the end, in our situation, everybody agrees that this is a great improvement. And I can assure you, even though it sounds most like a technical improvement and an automation exercise, it's made a huge difference and a big impact to all the teams. Just the transparency that this build pipeline provides leaves no room for hiding all our problems. More details can also be found in this book. Our case is mentioned there as well. To close off this part, this to us was a clear demonstration of what impact that the technical excellence can have on our organization. And this is a lesson we've learned and we've been applying ever since, I think.
So we had different initiatives ongoing, started over the year 2019, no more major, less so, and others. Our people at some points got a bit lost across all the different changes ongoing. So change management is not an easy thing, and we felt that they didn't know, they lose track of the site, of the place where we wanted to be, the situation we wanted to reach. So it was clear that there was a lack of somehow vision from management to the teams, to the people involved. And we decided, me as a ICT manager and a few volunteers, to craft a vision that I presented beginning of this year. So it first started with by reminding everyone what is our predictable future as a pension institution. So Tom already has talked about politics. It's likely that new requirements comes in the coming months. We know that. And that when they will come, I'm pretty sure that there will be quite some interest and high expectations from the politics. So they will want to see the result, the outcome of these pension reforms as fast as possible, of course. We have this huge technical debt that we know at SFP. So of course we have some shadow IT, Visual Basic application. But what worries us the most is actually the tedious applications that Tom has introduced a few minutes ago. So it's, of course, it's Java, but it has been built 20 years ago. It has evolved a lot. And we reach at the point now where we feel the pain when we have to change something because of intrication of different modules and these kind of things. So it's really complicated now to adapt the behavior of our IT ecosystem. Digital transformation, of course, is a no-brainer. So things change all the time. New technology comes in, AI, blockchain, and different hype. The needs of the citizen is also evolving. So citizen now, even the pensioner, trust me on that, is going to My Pension. My Pension is a website. So the pensioner can consult the payment of his pension, can take some actions before the pension gets actually calculated and attributed. It's also a way for us to exchange with the citizen. So there is new needs coming from citizens that we need to cover, to answer. Talent war is also something that many institutions face. But as a federal agency, we don't have all the tools, the weapons that private sector may have in terms of salary package and so on. So we need to be attractive using different ways. And certainly we need to welcome the new talents that join the SFP so that they are happy to work for us and that they see opportunities and that they can actually find their place smoothly. And of course, everything which is not predictable yet. COVID crisis at the time was just a line on the newspaper. You see now where we get with the COVID at the moment. What if Belgium would be split into? It's always a possibility. Then we need also to react quickly as an IT organization. So all of these actually was a signal to say to everyone, to our people, to our developer, okay, we did lots of nice things in the past. We fulfill a lot of mission. We just managed to put this project in production successfully. But for the future, we just can't do the same thing same way. We need to do things differently, more sustainable, more efficiently, more impactful. And that's why I came with this vision statement, which is a one-page statement, one sentence actually. What I expect for this institution, for this IT organization, is that we become a lean, efficient, autonomous ICT, enabled by technical expertise and excellence, driven by impact and value. Voilà, for all of these three topics in this vision, but I will not go into all details. It's almost 6 o'clock, but just to highlight one or two elements here. So maybe first automate. What I meant with this, I think it's a shame to see energy, to see time of talented developers, analysts, doing operational activities like following things in production, running scripts, going to database to create Excel files for stakeholders. It's something we should definitely avoid. Our time is much more well invested by crafting solutions, designing things, providing answer to citizen needs than just following this kind of operation activity. So I asked my people to automate first whenever it's possible. When it's not, I told them just see with the stakeholders, the business, how they could play a role within operational activities. So it means that we are going to provide them some tools and they will actually be empowered and do some IT activities in a really secure way on our behalf. If business cannot be activated because it's maybe too technical, too risky, then we are going to, for the last resort option, we will see with operational operations. So it's an IT subdivision with people that have global IT knowledge but don't have development skills. We will see with them if we can onboard them and take care of things on our behalf. And if none of these options are possible, then it means that we failed something and we need to think again. Second aspect I want to highlight here is the need for technical expertise and excellence. I strongly believe it is an absolute prerequisite to a real agile, effective institution delivery. If you don't have that, it's very likely that you are not as impacting as you could be. So what I expect here from the solution created, it's that we think about modularity. We design services, building blocks that can be reused. We start working in test-driven approach, so putting quality really in the front line. Of course, we aim for at some point, not now, but in the future, we will go for on-demand delivery, so continuous integration, continuous release. And also, we need to become an environment, a technical environment where newcomer can easily find their way because we are using clean code, because we have this well-segregated module and architecture. So these are technical aspects I really believe we should invest time and energy. And the last point, measurements. It is crucial to, when we design solution, to come by design in the solution with the capacity to measure the impacts of our solution. So in 2020, we cannot just tolerate that we do things because someone told us that this is the right way to do. No, we should be able to evaluate, to see, to observe the impact of the things and to react if the impact is not as good as expected. Well, that's some key elements of this vision statement. I will let Tom continue.
Yeah. So, like Stefan said, we are now somewhere at the beginning of this year. Obviously, in March, drastic things happened, where suddenly we had to learn to collaborate remotely. And actually, this collaboration is a big part of our LESS story as well, because actually, when we did the flip, not that much changed in the way that the 4 teams involved were organized. So the 4 development teams, they stayed the same. The biggest change for the teams was suddenly we were doing all the rituals all together in a big room. And this is where we got to learn that, yes, indeed, collaboration is hard. At the beginning, and sometimes even now, there are sometimes awkward silences where nobody really knows what to do next, where everybody's kind of waiting for somebody else to do something. There's confusion, there's frustration. At the beginning, we spent a lot of our time as Scrum Masters preparing for all these rituals. We were making flip charts, inviting business people, preparing agendas, facilitating heavily to make these things go as smoothly as possible. It felt very exhausting, especially because we'd had the bright idea to do all these rituals standing up in the hope that it would lead to brief discussions and effective decisions. But actually standing up like this for a whole morning or afternoon seemed only to lead to back pain and being tired. And at the beginning, the analysts in the teams, they really struggled with the new role and the new way we were doing things, because the analysts used to do all the prep work, the coordination, the meetings with the business, etc. So it seemed that their role was now taken by these big room rituals and perhaps by the Scrum Masters. Of course, developers struggled with these long meetings that seemed unproductive to them because they just want to get on with coding, right? And especially the backlog refinements were hard, and I think they still are. It's really where we feel the pain of having all these complicated laws, the fragmented business, the different languages, the technical debt that was mentioned. But we persevered and we experimented with different styles of, for example, doing the review and also the planning and the refinement. We tried back-to-back presentations. We tried a more organic bazaar style of reviewing things, and we moved to something in between. We also noticed that through practice, we are getting better at collaborating. We see now that the teams know each other, which wasn't the case. People in the teams know the people in the business and vice versa, and things like that. This is a change that has happened that we can definitely see over the last 2 years. It's also become clear for us as Scrum Masters that we have to help the teams to do this. And we have to make sure, instead of trying to do it for them, right? We have to fail together to learn together. We have to feel frustrated and awkward together to evolve together. So since we've had that realization, we've taken this as our mission statement. We want to create structure and space for the teams to take ownership of the process, to resolve issues, and finally to learn and grow, apart from influencing the rest of our organization as well. So how to concretely do this? We draw a lot of inspiration from Sociocracy 3.0 patterns. Here you see a proposal forming about an experiment, a variation that came from the team on how to improve our refinement meetings. So we ended up with assigning what they call project owners, points of contact to follow up specific deliverables, features, etc. So these project owners, they prepare the refinement, they invite the right people, they make sure that the decisions are documented, etc., etc. We as Scrum Masters spent more time just trying to make things transparent, either good or bad. And then obviously in March this year, we suddenly had to go full remote. I suppose like many of you, this was a big change. However, I think it shows how far that we've come already, because we absorbed this change without too many problems. Now we manage our backlog and all our rituals in Microsoft Teams. We make a lot of use of Miro, like we're doing at this presentation, as you can see. And working this way actually forces us to make everything very visual and very explicit. And I think in a way, being forced to work full remote has helped us to see things more clearly. Either way, we've learned that collaboration is hard. It's very valuable though, and you can learn it and improve it by practicing and by repeating. All right.
So I will quickly introduce you our last tool, Nobel that we started together with one of our coach that is helping us, Olivier Costa. So Nobel is a visual tool that is part of the lean management framework. It's widely used in Japan. It's coming from Toyota, I believe. So it's a place where you will find many information about what is ongoing into your process, into your project. And this place will allow participants that could be involved directly in the projects or not. It will allow them to see what is actually going on, what is under control, and what is not. So you can see that as a big management cockpit, change cockpit, with many different figures and variables. So let's maybe go through two different panels. The first one, the purpose. So it just reminds what we want to achieve here. So it's becoming an institution and create an optimal value delivery process. So being more effective, more impacting when delivering. That's the goal we want to strive here. So in this panel, we will have different metrics, not KPI, but really metrics that are going to be updated and discussed on a periodical basis. So every week, for instance, me and the coaches and sometimes other people, we go through the different metrics and we will look if we have made some progress or not, if the experiments that we have been started are actually causing a positive effect or an effect at all, and if some actions shall be taken also. On the panel on the right, I've highlighted another aspects we are following. You have here 4 different axes: technical excellence, interaction between people, product development, and our capacity to manage the information and the communication. So for all these axes that we call pillar, there will be one owner that will be in charge of providing some measurements, some metrics, keeping them updated, structure the experiments, and also report at some point to the people involved into this exercise. For instance, Tom is really interested in technical expertise and excellence, and in the release process in particular. So Tom has provided several figures where we measure different progress, number of active branch, for instance, duration of the pipeline, and so on and so on. So it's the place, thanks to this place, we can quickly share and discuss on the impact of what we are doing with our team.
All right. So that's the OBEA. So over the last 2 years, we've made a very conscious effort to try and learn a lot. We've organized a bunch of trainings. For example, we've had Simon Brown over with us for 2 days to talk about C4 and architecture for developers. We've organized evening meetups, for example, with the software craftsmanship community here in Belgium. Evening meetups are always Belgian style, so there's always beer involved, of course. The biggest impact we noticed actually come from the katas and the mobbing. So every Thursday afternoon, we do coding katas. And this is where we practice pair programming, test-driven development, code design, etc. on these toy problems, on these katas. We learn about code smells and refactoring and clean code and design patterns. We learn to do mob programming, remote mob programming even, in a simplified and in a safe environment. We need to learn these skills because over the last 20 years, we've not needed them. Now that we've come to the realization that we have this technical debt and that there are ways of getting out of it, the question now is to learn all these skills. And so most of the teams now do mobbing sessions at least once a week. where we apply the things that we learn in the katas on the production code. So in our case, it's mainly refactoring, making the code testable. And so if you run into a specific problem in the mob, it will be a great topic for the next kata to practice on a toy problem.
We invested a lot on quality as well to keep things going smoothly and correctly, of course, because failing the pension calculation is not really an option. But we realized that one part of our technical debts were actually coming from our safety net. So we had a lot of end-to-end testing, validating things via typical scenario. So it could be mocking a user doing some actions, running a job, hitting a button, then we check the result in the database, and so on and so on. So this kind of tests were really handy and useful to improve the quality. But as the time went, we realized that they were also really heavy to maintain, and they were on their own also a source of frustration, of time loss, and at some point also a source of loss of quality. So we seek external support to help us on this, and the answer actually is well known. We learned about this testing pyramid, so where you have at the bottom lots of low-level testing that validates the behavior of the application, and you have on the top a few testing validating the whole chain. This is really crucial. This testing pyramid, this testing strategy, because having this fast feedback replied by the system when a developer changes something actually allows us to dare changing things, to be brave enough to try and directly receive a feedback. And so we know actually if something we try is successful or not. Before having this situation, it was really painful to have a feedback from the system. We had to wait sometimes for 1 or 2 weeks so that the proper end-to-end tests run to get a feedback from the system. So that's a work in progress, of course. We have been doing much progress in several aspects, but there is still a long way to go.
Yeah, and even our quest for continuous integration and trunk-based development is continuing. And even here, we've been making progress in the last few weeks. Our build pipeline is going a bit faster, and I know there's a few changes coming up that will make it go a lot faster. So I think in 2 months or so, we'll be under 45 minutes, which is a big improvement. We've also started cutting branches in our code repository. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a low enough number of branches to make some meaningful statistics about branch lifetime, etc., which will help us to glide into something that's closer to trunk-based development. So I feel at least that things are really moving in this respect, and I am very curious where we will be, say, a year from now.
And one of our most recent and probably most ambitious initiative is to try domain-driven design. So for one specific project, really complex, so big complexity, lots of functional complexity embedded. We would like to test this paradigm. So we don't have the skills right now. We have some external reinforcements that are comfortable with this. So we plan to experiment, get some skills, try. But we are convinced that it will provide us value also and improve the architecture, the modularity and the maintainability of our application on the long run.
Yeah, and actually, Stefan, I don't know if I've told you this already. This morning, we managed to find and decide on the volunteers for this leading team that will start pulling this domain-driven design approach on our conformity.
Great.
So I'm excited about that. So yeah, by now we've been doing LESS for about 2 years. So you might wonder, what has LESS done for us? So these are just a few observations that I make. We don't spend a lot of time just coordinating. We do the coordination while doing the useful work. We also spend less time finding the person who should solve our problem, because there's not that many specialities, there's not that many roles. If we have a problem, then we know that we will be the ones solving it, so there's no room to hide. And like I said, we spend a lot more time collaborating and communicating, and we spend a lot more time on our real deep problems, which is very valuable. However, it doesn't always feel very comfortable. So I think there's definitely a balance there. We don't want to get too comfortable, but a bit of comfort sometimes is nice, I have to say. What's happened to our organization in the meantime? So this built-in release team that was in the transversal sub-department has moved into our development domain. The 4 teams that we have in the payment domain that are doing less, we are merging the backlog of the payment domain with this conformity domain, so with these teams. We have a few communities now, so this architect teams has disappeared as well. We now have an A team, which is more an open community. The Nobel Majors community is still there, of course. And also we organize every 2 weeks an open space online. And I have to say, I've been very impressed with the effect that has. It's becoming a platform where people who have a problem or a question can raise a flag, get in some help, spend 20 minutes or 40 minutes solving a problem. So it's really becoming a driver for continuous improvement. And I think it shows again that we're getting better at collaborating. I think 2 years ago, for example, this would not take off as well as it has now. Of course, these are just my observations. As a Scrum Master, I obviously love Scrum. I obviously think less is great, etc. But I will ask the question to Stefan, the boss, who has more responsibilities than just playing around with teams. We're 2 years further now. If 2 years ago you knew what you know now about the difficulties and the results, etc., would you still decide to go for less?
Yes, definitely. Of course, I would do some things differently. Clearly, at the beginning, we underestimate the impact on business. We believe it was just about an IT decision, an IT thing. Yeah, obviously it was not. But yeah, that's the part of that's the learning aspect, I think. So we learned a lot of things. But I'm also convinced that this full change, this full transformation, has brought us some resilience. What we saw with the previous lockdown during April, March, and May was that people actually were taking things in hands, and they knew what to do. They found solutions themselves, and eventually, yeah, we managed to fulfill our objectives and be on time with different projects. So for me, it was probably one of the biggest success since I'm managing this department.
All right.
Voilà.
Great.
So, thank you for listening.
Exactly. We've come at the end of our story. If there's still somebody there. Yeah, I see movement. Great. You're all still alive.
You can turn the microphone on.
Yeah, if you have any questions, remarks, ideas, you can ask them now, or you can try and find us on LinkedIn. Yes, I see movement.
It's a long day.
Yeah, you're still muted. So I can't. Yeah, great.
Okay, we have at least one question. First, thank you. First, thank you. And we have at least one question. Go.
Yes, thank you again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, 2 questions. One, when you added the digital Obeya and some practices around that with 3 improvement areas and a leader for each of them, how, if it fit within the less default backlog and rituals, can you explain if it fit within or if it was done separately? So did you have meetings, or did it fit within?
So it does its own cycle of ritual. So it's not directly embedded within the ritual of the team. So agile coach, external coach, myself, we have these moments every week where we share the progress. We discuss on the different panels. We also it also happened that we share this widely because the purpose of an Nobel is to be transparent as much as possible. Yeah, some metrics are shared towards our team, but we also have this open space where we can also explain and share some interesting progress for everyone.
Thank you. And the second question is in a way related, maybe, because the second question is, how do you communicate outside of the bubble? Is it not on?
Try to.
I'm touching it. It's not on.
We heard your question, though.
Yeah, you can hear it, but the other people here can't. So I'm going to turn my face. Is it?
No.
Hello? No, it's not on. Anyway, so the second question was, outside of the less bubble, how have you communicated and what are your plans for possibly spreading less across a broader part of the organization?
Mm-hmm. I will answer first, Anton, if you want to add something later on. Basically, we want to inspire. So we don't want to convince by force or whatever people. So we try to communicate when we can about what we do. And what we see is that people got interested. Tom mentioned that 2 of the teams are actually considering to join this less bubble. For the other part of the organization, well, they have their own way of working, and it's perfectly fine. They also have their success, and voilà. So we are really open to share and to coach if there is if a need should pop up sometime. Voilà. About communication aspects, it really depends on which stakeholders we are talking about. If it's a PMO, for instance, or project management office, it will be mostly O that will take care of the discussion, the coordination with them. I will be more discussing with my other colleague, ICT manager, and the teams also have some contacts. We share the same application, the same code base, so contacts are always there, of course.
Yeah. So I'd like to add, Desales is a monolith. So all these teams we deploy together. So every week we briefly sit together to see, okay, is there anything that we should exchange about the upcoming release or anything with the release process. So that definitely binds us together. And then, yeah, these communities, the open space as well, they help to build bridges in the informal way. But we realize as long as Desales is one monolith, we are working on the same product.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Thanks for your talk, guys. One small thing I noticed, you had 4 measurements on the CI pipe. You know which one I refer to?
Yes.
They seemed familiar to me from things like the State of DevOps report or so.
Yes, that's not a coincidence.
So I wonder whether you have gotten that into place, and if so, what kind of value have you gotten out of starting to measure this?
So first of all, we've started not that long ago. Getting all these numbers is not always so easy. So we're building ways to get these statistics easily. But yes, indeed, they come straight out of the accelerator. There's no secret in there. But for example, sharing our deliverable lead time with the teams opens the discussion. And that's where we are now. Become mindful of, okay, what is lead time? Is it really that long, or things like that? That's the value that we see now. We think in the future, we will be able to follow it up more. And because we will be able to see results of our experiments in these numbers. And a second thing that we've achieved already. So most of these numbers are for Desales as a whole. So again, it binds the separate development domains together. So it helps us to just align at scale because we share the same metrics.
Thanks. Any other questions? If no questions, then thanks.
You're welcome.
Enjoy your evening in Amsterdam.